Well, hello and welcome to this week's there we go. Welcome to this week's Wednesday webinar from Kowalah. My name is Charlie, and if this is the first of your Kowalah Wednesday webinars, welcome. We get together every Wednesday at the same time, and it gives us 1 hour to talk about something that is top of mind in the world of AI. So that can be something related to the work that we're doing with our clients. It could be something that we are seeing internally that we're using, and then maybe some of the new releases that are coming out from the AI vendors. And it's such a fast-moving space that it gives us some time to think through that and share a little bit about what we're learning with you. Now, today, we're going to be going through our normal flow, which is to talk about the main topic. We'll spend about 20 or 30 minutes talking about that, and I'll introduce you to that in a minute. Then we've got a little bit of our regular spot of AI in the news, where we'll talk a little bit about some of the latest releases and news updates. Like I mentioned, there's a lot that is going on at the moment, and so we can keep you up to date with what's important for you to take back into your business. And then we've got the opportunity to ask any questions. Now, if you want to ask questions as we go, do feel free. You're in a Zoom meeting, and so depending on what device you're on, maybe at the top of your screen at the bottom, you'll see both a chat box where you can chat with other participants and myself. And you can also see a Q&A box where you can ask questions there as well. So feel free to do that. I'm just going to switch my camera to being here, and then I can look straight at the camera. But like I say, don't feel that you need to wait until the end to ask any questions. If you've got something about what I'm going to talk about around managed agents, around AI in the news, then feel free to chime in. So with that, let's get into the main topic of today, Claude Managed Agents, and specifically two features of it called outcomes and memory. Now, if you were on a Kowalah Wednesday webinar a few weeks back, we actually introduced managed agents when they were launched. I want to say maybe this was 4 or 5 weeks ago, but managed agents is a pretty new feature. But they are rolling out more and more functionality to it and improving that feature and functionality. And so outcomes is one that was pretty recently launched. And then also memory, which has been made generally available as well. And as we walk through this, I want you to think about it not from a purely technical standpoint of like what is an outcome or what is in a memory and how would I build this, and a bit more as I'll guide you through about like the business implications of this and how the people in your organization that own processes, that manage processes, can start to think about the business context of this and then take that to the technical people that are building and managing managed agents. So firstly, what is a managed agent? You might have heard of this phrase and you might even sort of have your own understanding of it. When I'm talking about a managed agent, I'm talking about a specific feature, a part of the product of Anthropic, the makers of Claude. And they launched this feature called Managed Agents, whereby an agent can run in Anthropic's environment. It can handle all of the interactions and the chats. Now, I'm not going to go through the details of managed agents today because we did that a few weeks ago, but just to give you an example of how we're using managed agents, and I'm going to switch onto my other screen here just to go to this image. So here I am in my Gmail because we use Google here at Kowalah, and here I'm in my chat interface, and I'm chatting here with one of our agents who's called Krista. Krista has got an email address, krista@kowalah.com, and Krista handles our demand gen on the marketing side here. Krista reports up into a human manager who is Caitlin, who's on the line and moderating today's call. So all of our agents have got a human manager that delegates work to them. And so here is a pretty typical conversation that I'd be having with Krista or any of our agents. Hey, Krista, can you help me to draft up a new webinar, Insanity, for next week? It's going to be based on Claude Design, showing what it is and how we're using it for the Kowalah design system. And then Krista comes back to me. This is the agent. This is the managed agent from Anthropic. Hey, Charlie, love this topic. Let me go and check Sanity. Yeah, I can see we've got no overlap. The next Wednesday slot is the 27th of May. Does that work? And then I've said, yeah, okay, great. So Claude Design was a new product. I'm giving a little bit more context there. And I'm just having a conversation with Krista, the agent, as if I was having a conversation with a human. And whilst this is the interaction is happening here in Google Chat, it could be happening in email, it could be happening in Teams, it could be happening in Slack. And the interaction layer doesn't really matter. It's about the fact that at the back end, you've got Anthropic's managed agents that are running a lot of this experience. So that's their managed agent in action. What's the actual architecture look like? Once again, we talked about this on the session 3 or 4 weeks ago, and so I'm not going to go into detail, but I do want to explain it because it's going to set up what we're going to talk about memory and outcomes. So on the left-hand side, you've got the different channels. So I showed you GChat there. So this is how you communicate with your agents. Then we've got a project. We're using Vercel, which is our cloud hosting platform, and we're using a Next.js project. And that handles all of the communications that come in from these channels, different webhooks, how we schedule the agent to do various bits and pieces. And so that runs in a Vercel project. But one of the things that the Vercel project does is to pass instructions to the Anthropic managed agents that sit in the Anthropic platform, not within Vercel, they're actually in Anthropic. And that runs multiple agents. So Krista is one of those agents. Those agents run in an environment which provides them with access to code and certain languages and libraries. We set up one or more sessions with each of those agents. So my direct Google chat with Krista is one of those sessions. And then we send and receive events from those agents. So I send Krista a message, that's an event. She sends me back a response, that's another event. Now, two of the features that have been rolled out that we're going to talk about today are memory. So how does an agent know what is happening from one session to another in the same way that a human would remember the conversations that I've had with you and you and you, maybe a podcast that I listened to, maybe a blog post that I've read. I've got this memory. And so then the next time you talk to me, I can use that memory. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then outcomes is another new feature, which allows us to define to the agent what done looks like. So just as I might assign a task to a member of my team, I might say, right, and this is what good looks like. This is what done looks like. So keep going until you've met what done looks like. And then you can come back to me with the outcome. And then on the right-hand side, just for completion of what we're talking about, our agents have got access to an agent MCP server that we have built. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, and it is the protocol for how agents speak to other systems. So just like you saw in that chat with Krista there, where she said, I'm going to go and check Sanity, our CMS, to see if we've had any webinars on Claude Design. That was using the MCP server, and that allows us to give permissions and access to other systems to our agents. So that's the architecture, and we're going to talk now specifically about memory and outcomes and how you can think about those to improve the experience that you're having with your agents. So firstly, a concept around memory. We're going to talk about memory, and a concept is the memory store. You can create multiple memory stores that your agents can use. Now, as you can see on the screen here, within the Kowalah platform, we've got a number of memory stores. Some are based on the agents themselves. So you can see we've got a Krista memory, we've got a Pete memory, we've got a Carolina memory. All of these are different agents and they're managing their own memory store. You can see we've got a number of other ones for different Koala customers and the users in those customers. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So, Krista memory. Let's have a look at what's in Krista's memory store. Well, this is what a memory store looks like when you open it up in the Anthropic platform. On the left-hand side, a memory store is just a folder structure. She has got corrections where she's changed things. She has got patterns where she has identified patterns about our webinars and different channel performances from the leads that we're getting through. She's got a preferences folder, and it's Caitlin and myself that are the people that are speaking to Krista. And so she's created files for each of those. And then she's also created a duplicates file. So let's just take a look at that in reality. So here I am in the Anthropic platform, and now I'm going into Krista's memory. And let me just expand this. And let's have a look here. Webinar themes. So webinar themes and patterns, this memory, format patterns, watch me build something real. Charlie gravitates to this consistently. Oh, well, we're doing this right now, aren't we? That's nice. We're doing a live demo format. Product deep dives, which is kind of what we're doing now. And then new Anthropic product launches. Theme clusters from our webinars. We do like Claude product launches, managed agents we're doing now. Build along, security, verticals, strategy and leadership, product tools, and so on. Now, what's interesting about this is I didn't create this. Caitlin didn't create this. Krista created this. As you have your conversations with these agents, they lay down memory. I like to think of this as sort of Hansel and Gretel and laying down breadcrumb trails. The agents are saying, oh, this is interesting, and this might be useful to me in the future. So I'm going to lay this down. Not only is Krista laying down the memory herself, but Krista is the one that has determined all of this folder structure. She has determined she's going to create a preferences folder, and that is going to be based on the humans that are speaking to her. She has determined that there are some duplicates and that we should avoid that. She has determined that we need these different patterns. And so this is one of the things that I'm really loving as we go on our own managed agent journey, is seeing these things, dare I say it, come to life. Like they're laying down memory much in the same way that a human might be writing notes in their notebook and going, I'm gonna remember that, or I'm gonna create a Google file where I'm gonna save that information.
Just a question. Sorry, Charlie, just a
Yeah.
question. So is Krista, the memories that she has for me and you, are they communicating? Is she using that to inform her answers to us respectively?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you are having a conversation with Krista, she's aware of what is in her memory store, and she would then, go and take a quick look at the Krista memory. And so here we've got, from some of your chats with her about our marketing OKRs, exactly when, we've been having chats. She's got information here about the direct sort of spaces that you're in. So your personal space, and then maybe there's a marketing space that she's part of. So it's really fantastic that she's laying all of that stuff down as we go. You can also influence this a little bit. So you can, when you're having your chats with Krista, you can say, remember that I've got a dog called Mabel, or remember that I like to always communicate in rhyme. And you can store and get Krista to store those memories as you go as well.
That's great. Thanks, Charlie.
No worries. I'm really sort of thinking about this in my own interactions with these agents. Like, how would I onboard a new member of the team, or how would I keep coaching a member of the team, or how would I share, I saw this amazing thing at the weekend, or I listened to this great podcast. And now I'm thinking about these managed agents as something that is, coachable and is interested and is hungry to learn, knowing that they've got these memories, you can feed that, and then the next time you're having conversations, then they can pick up on that and use it. Just to add on that, as you're seeing there, these memories are just markdown files. There's no code, there's nothing cryptic. Claude, the managed agent, Krista, is just writing these. Each file is just a selection of written information, and depending on how each memory store is set up, it can keep writing, creating new files, overwriting, and updating the memory as it goes. So thinking about that a little bit, when you're thinking about creating these memories and memory stores, a memory store can be read or read write. So the ones that I've been showing you here are read write. Krista is able to write to this memory store. She's able to create new folders, create new files, and to create new text within those files. But it is also possible to have a read-only memory, or memory store, I should say, in which you have determined what those memories are before you start, and the agent itself is not able to overwrite them. So what might be a good example of that? Well, think about you might have some company context, some company information, your company strategy, your company products, and you want to serve that up to your agents as memory, but you don't want them to read and to write and to overwrite into that. So there is a very valid context for read-only context. Think of this a little bit like your company intranet or your company standard operating procedures that you want people to have visibility of, but not to go and overwrite. As we talked about, the agent is the one that decides the file structure in these read-write memory stores. So you don't need to worry about that. I didn't architect this. I just, let Krista get to work, and she has architected that. And then within those files, the agent decides what to write. Again, in the read-write version of these memory stores, the agent decides what they're going to put in that. So really the functionality is important to know, but then the agent is the one that gets to work. You don't need to spend too much time on that. Now, thinking about these memory stores and about how you might architect those. And this is where I said at the start of the call, as a business person, as a process owner, this is where I want you to be thinking about it. Less about the architecture and the technical, but more like how would I want to coach this agent? So one is, per agent. So we were looking at Krista's memory store there. So Krista, as an agent, has got her own memory store, and she is able to write to that, and she owns and manages that. So that is a very valid use case, and I definitely encourage that. The second concept of a memory store might be per product, depending on how your system is, your service or your product is structured. You could imagine that you've got a memory store for a part of your platform. It might be for your different service offerings. It might be per business unit. It might be per region. These are where you might have your standard operating procedures, your processes, the things that are on your intranet. And wouldn't it be great to provide that as read only to your agents so that they can consume that depending on what the conversation is going along. A next one might be per user. And so we have this for our customers that are using the Kowalah agent, that when they start speaking to the Kowalah agent, whether that is through Slack or Teams or any other method, we know who that user is. And so we want to provide a memory store for that user so that if the user says, I always want you to communicate in rhyming slang, I always want you to use emojis, or by the way, I've got a dog called Mabel, or, I live in London, that we can store some of those memories per user. Now, in the Krista memory store, you saw that we had some information about Caitlin and myself. Now that's fine because it's internal and it's just for a few of us, and so that's fine for Krista to store those memories. Now scale that up, and we've now got 1.5 million Koala customers using an agent. Well, we don't want to have a file with 1.5 million different files within it. So this is where you'd have a memory store per user, and then depending on which user was speaking, you load that memory store up so it's specific. The advantage of that also is that where we've got multiple agents can pull on that per user memory store as well. And then a different version of that is to go up one level and have a per account memory store. You might call your customers clients or customers or organizations, but this is like a per entity type memory store. So one of our customer users might have a per user memory store, but we might also have a per organization memory store where we store information about the company and their financial year and things like that. Now you can load up to 8 different memory stores into each agent session. So you can imagine one of our customers is having a conversation with Carolina, our AI project manager, and we're loading up into Carolina's session the per agent memory store, which is everything that Carolina knows about herself and a process. You could imagine that we're loading up a per product memory store, which is all about the specific products and services that Koala provides to our customers. You could imagine that we also upload a per user memory store, which is all the past conversations and the terminology about that individual user. And then we also load up a per organization or per account memory store about that company, the contract they've got with us, their financial year, their ways of working. And it's the combination of these 4 memory stores that give the agent this really personalized and depth of context about that individual and the conversation that they're trying to have with the agent. So, some thinking about how you might plan your memories and your memory stores before you go anywhere near any technology that you might use to build these or working with your development team to build this out. So, the first thing is planning ahead. Think about putting your mind casting your mind into the view of your customers, the people that are going to be using your agents, and into the mind of the agent and the kind of information that they might need in order to support those questions and tasks and the work that the humans are asking. What types of memories might be useful? Is that by user? Is it by organization? Is it about your processes? When are those memories going to be used? By whom and for what purpose? So think ahead. For me personally, this is a whiteboard and flip chart type situation. This is about mapping things out with some post-it notes and really thinking that if this was a human to human conversation, what information would that human need in order to deliver a great experience? So having planned the types of memories, the types of memory stores that you might need, then it's about building those memory stores. And this is where a developer is required. So whoever on your team, or whether that's your Koala team that are building your managed agent infrastructure, you're going to say to them, like, as part of this agent, we think we're going to need 4 different memory stores. We're going to need one for the agent, one for the product, one for the user, one for the organization, or whatever it is that you've come out from that planning process. And your developers, when they are onboarding your agents, they will create these memory stores. Now, the memory stores for the agent and for the user and for the account or the organization will likely just be empty. Here's the memory store and it is empty. But for those ones that are read only, you can also populate them at the time when you're building the memory store. So for your process, for example, your standard operating procedure, you might build the memory store and then preload it with 10 folders and 100 documents that build that memory. So that's part of that creation process. Then the next bit is about teaching your agent. So a key part of a managed agent is its system prompt and the skills that that agent uses. And within the system prompt and the skills that it uses, you can raise Krista's awareness of what memory stores you've got access to, which ones are read and which ones are read write, and how to think about writing things into that document, into that memory store. So within Krista's system prompt, we've got instructions about who you're going to be working with. You're going to be working with Caitlin and Charlie. We're going to be working on these types of things. You should consider creating memory for these purposes. You should consider checking your memory store when we ask about these kinds of things. So the system prompt is a key part. And then with the skills, so for example, Krista has got a skill that helps her to ideate and plan and publish webinars that we do each week. And in that skill, one of the things that we have coached her on is go and check your memories to look for how, for previous webinars that we've done. And she stores that. And that means that she doesn't have to go and check sanity each time because she's already built up this memory of previous webinars. With teaching your agent, I think a lot about onboarding a human. Like how would I do that? And let's make sure that we've built that for our managed agents as well. And then the final bit is reviewing and improving. These agents are going to lay down this memory as you go. The more you use them, the more they're going to lay down memory. And so go in, take a look, have a chat with your agent. What memories have you got? What have you laid down? How are you laying down these memories? What instructions do you think I could give you to help you improve memories? Caitlin and I were just chatting earlier about Krista and how we can, continue to coach and improve her. And I was saying one of the things that I'm having a great deal of success with other agents that I'm working with is just to keep teaching them and encouraging them to lay down memories. I've just listened to this podcast. Here's what I found useful. Why don't you save that as a memory? So I'm almost coaching the agent themselves. The final thing that I will say on memories, prepare for dreams. This was announced just last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. It is in research preview at the moment, but we'd expect to see it hit general availability fairly soon. And what a dream is in managed agents is you can set up a schedule. So let's say weekly, I want to run a dream. And what dreams does is goes and has a look at all of the memories that an agent has got access to. It can then look at up to the last 100 sessions or conversations that agent has had. And it can then come up with a review and an assessment about improving the memories, mainly by creating new ones and giving you a recommendation about deleting or updating the existing ones. So this idea of the agent dreaming on a weekly basis to self-improve its own memories, I think is really, really interesting. Right, so that is memories. Now let's have a think about outcomes, which is another new feature that was launched a couple of weeks ago. And the phrase that I want you to keep in mind here is, what does done look like? Now imagine that you are assigning a task to a member of your finance team. Maybe it's a finance analyst, and you're saying like, hey, Emily, can you help me to build out a discount cash flow? We're about to be making a certain investment and we want to then work out what that investment is going to mean in terms of the cash flow to the business and whether this investment is a good use of our current funds or not. And so you might assign that to someone in your team, and then they might come back to you, with some questions, or I've half done or whatever, and you say, look, let me show you what done looks like, and then only come back to me when you've ticked all of these boxes. So in this example, and this is actually the example that was on the Anthropic website for discount cash flow, you might say, right, well, I need some revenue projections. So if you're going to build out a discount cash flow model, I want it to use at least the last five fiscal years to enable us to project, and it must go at least 5 years forward. If you've done one for 1 year, no, that's not enough. I'm going to go back to you and say, look, I need the other 4 years. We need to go further forwards. I need you to have some assumptions about what this growth rate is. You need to explain how you've got that 5 year projection and that they're reasonable. Then, in terms of our costs, like we have got a way of handling our costs of goods sold and our operating expenses in the company. And I need you to have modeled them separately because we've got different processes. So, all of these kinds of things, you could imagine having a conversation with your human colleague to say, look, this is what I expect. And it's fine that you're going to have some questions, but really don't come back to me unless you've ticked all of these boxes, because otherwise I'm just going to send you away again. That is what an outcome is. An outcome is giving Krista, or whatever your agent is called, a rubric, an outcome, and saying, look, I'm going to give you this task, and I want you to complete all of these before you come back to me, instead of coming back with a chat. So if I think about Krista, for example, it might be, help me plan the next 4 weeks of webinars. And for a webinar to be organized, it needs to have a title, it needs to have a description, it needs to have a Zoom registration link, it needs to have 3 learning points, it needs to have a suggested design for the website, it needs to have an image to go with it. All of these things. If we don't have those things, then the job is not done, and I'm going to come back to you for more things. So how does an outcome get used once we've got that rubric? Well, I want you to think about it in almost this concept of 2 agents rather than 1. So continuing the discount cash flow scenario on the previous rubric, we've got my finance agent. So maybe it's Freddie the finance agent. And Freddie's got some skills, he's got a system prompt, maybe he's got some memories. And I've gone to Freddie to say, right, I want you to help me build out a discount cash flow. What an outcome does is that Freddie does his work, and he then sends it to the outcome, and the outcome scores the work that Freddie has done. So with that rubric here, we've got these, about 9 or 10 things. And what the outcome does is then goes and scores Freddie's output, is deliverable against the rubric, and goes, yes, meets that, yes, meets that, no, does not meet that, yes, meets that, no, does not meet that. And if it fails on anything that is in that rubric, it sends it back to Freddie, the finance agent, and says, no, you failed, and here are the reasons why. And importantly, here's what you might choose to do in order to improve it so that I can pass it next time. Freddie gets to work again and around, and then Freddie has a new version and sends it back to the outcome. And that loop can continue up to n times, and n is defined by you when you're setting up the agent. I'll talk a little bit more about that in time. So that might be 3 times, it might be 5 times. What you want to avoid is that it's 1,000 times and suddenly you're stuck in a loop where there's a problem here, because if a human couldn't get through it in 2 or 3 times, say, right, stop, this is a coaching moment. So we're talking about 3 to 5, maybe 10 times maximum before we stop the loop. So that's the loop. Think of this as like another agent that is going to mark the work. Now, when might you use an outcome, and when would you use that versus just having a normal chat like I'm having with with Krista, or Caitlin's having with Krista about something? So the first is just immediately, right, we don't win any chat. I'm just going to use an outcome. Like, here's a task, here's the outcome, come back to me when it's done. And when you might choose to use this is something that is very kind of predefined, I don't know, like scoring a support ticket, to triage a support ticket as to whether it goes to a human user or it has been passed to another agent. So it's a predefined task. It's very, very repeatable. We can come up with a rubric that says this is exactly how you would you score this. And there's no additional user input that's provided. Just the outcome. Maybe there's some context, and this thing can just happen again, 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 and again. And so that would be a good use of an outcome, scoring something, triaging something, filling out a document. The second use case, and I have to say this is one that we're using quite heavily, is after a chat. So I'm having a conversation with an agent like Krista. We're having a chat about something, and maybe it is thinking about our marketing strategy, what we're working on, and then we start talking about webinars. And then say, right, yes. So now I've got a specific task. I want you to plan out the next 6 weeks of webinars. And at that point, we define an outcome, and a conversation turns into something. And the reason why we're using a lot of these is this is often how human interaction happens. There is a bit of context, there is a bit of understanding, there is a bit of gathering more information, of working out what it is that you want to do. And at that point, you delegate the work and set that individual off. And so we see a little bit of this happening. At that point, so whether it's immediately or during the chat, at the point when you're going to define an outcome, this is done through the code. This is not you typing this, but it's how you've set up your agent. You then pass that outcome, and your developers will use this, but it'll be user.define_outcome. What you do is send that rubric to the agent and basically say, look, keep going until you meet this rubric. You send the rubric at that point, and you define the max number of iterations. So this is the N that we talked about a minute ago. So at this point, you say, right, we've had our chat. Go and hit this outcome. Here's how you're going to score yourself, and go through this loop to a maximum of 5 times. And then the process will work. And what you will see in the managed agent platform is this iteration happening if you choose to look at the logs. Outcome failed, outcome passed. And this can carry on for 10, 20, 30 minutes as the agent continues to try and meet that outcome. Having successfully completed the outcome, the agent will then provide the deliverables. So what might this be? Well, it could be our list of upcoming webinars. It could be a proposal that has been written. It could be a project plan for an upcoming client project. And maybe these things are in spreadsheets or documents. They get stored to the agent's output file, and then you can retrieve them through some predetermined means. But that's really like when you'd use an outcome and then how that process works. So back to being a business sort of user, not worrying about the development, the technical side of things. How should you plan to use outcomes in your agents? Well, the first thing is planning ahead, just like we did with memories. Grab a whiteboard, grab a flip chart, grab some pens and some post-it notes, and have a think about use cases where you work with humans today and you've got a defined outcome. Maybe it's building a proposal. Maybe it's organizing pricing. Maybe it is writing a job description. Maybe it is planning a marketing campaign. If you've got defined outcomes that allow you to approve a piece of work, then that is a good starter for 10. What we increasingly find with our clients is that people don't have a defined outcome for the humans, which makes it really hard for humans to know whether they're doing a good job or not. So this can often be the catalyst for actually thinking through this. Let's take the Krista, organizing the webinars for the next 6 weeks. That might have been a task that I might have chatted to Caitlin about previously and gone, oh, hey, Caitlin, yeah, could you just, help me with the next 6 weeks of webinars and just tell me when you're done? And Krista would do some excellent work, but we'd never have agreed what the outcome is. And then when, sorry, I'm mixing up my agents and my humans. Well, I might have said this to Caitlin to come back to me. And Caitlin would have come back to me, and I wouldn't, we wouldn't have discussed what done looks like. And so this is a really nice opportunity to define these things so that you can get the agents to do good work. That ties into building the rubrics. So let's have a think about what done looks like, and have we got real definable and measurable criteria, that there is no gray areas here. I thought you meant this. I thought you meant that. No, let's make it that it is binary. Yes, this happened. No, it didn't happen. And then the agent and the outcomes can measure against that. Then what we're seeing a lot of success around is having a couple of, you might call them evaluations or evals, but things that you have used humans to pass on that specific scenario, or assign the same bit of work to the human that does it today and to your new agent, and go, right, well, how do we perform? The human has provided the what good looks like, what done looks like, and how does the agent do on performing and delivering against that. And then finally, just like we talked about with memory, reviewing and improving. This is not like pouring concrete. We're not building something that can't be changed afterwards. We want to improve it. Your agents are going to get more memory. You're going to add new skills to your agents. You're going to change the system prompt. The models are going to get better. And so you want to constantly be improving these outcomes so that you get a higher and higher set of outputs and outcomes. And what we want to do is to reduce the number of iterations taken to pass. Like I was saying with the human scenario, if a human takes 10 or 15 iterations to get to what done looks like, then I think this is a coaching moment. Maybe we're not providing the right instructions. Maybe the rubric's not right. Maybe there needs to be more coaching or better system prompt for the agent. So that is memories and outcomes, I should say. Hopefully, that has given you some ideas to start putting into your own managed agents yourself. In the last 15 minutes or so, we've got a little bit of AI in the news, which is our kind of recurring section to talk about what's going on in the world of AI over the last 7 days, to give you some useful stuff that you can take back into your own business and talk to others about. So the first is that Anthropic have, I don't know if it was like an official announcement or through an interview with the Wall Street Journal, I think this is, that they are about to have another stellar quarter, and that is going to accelerate them towards their first profitable quarter. So just in terms of some of these numbers, you can see that they're expected to surge to $10.9 billion of revenue in the quarter. So those mathematicians amongst you, times that by 4, well, it's more than $40 billion. Just over 1 year ago, so we're recording this in May, and I'm talking about being back in January, February last year. So just over 13, 14 months ago, they were at $1 billion of revenue. And now they're doing 11 in a quarter. So they were $1 billion just over a year ago. At Christmas time, it was about $9 billion of annual revenue. February, $19 billion of annual revenue. End of March is about 30 billion. And so here they're talking about $44 billion of annual revenue. The growth is huge. But the important bit here is, and now it's turning into profitable growth. So long over the last couple of years, we've talked about the investments that OpenAI and Anthropic and all of these vendors are having to make in compute and data centers, and that it was unsustainable VC and private equity dollars that were funding that. But here we've got the first evidence that these companies are starting to turn this into profitable cash flow. And I think that really changes the dynamic of what is to come in the future. Last week was Google's annual I/O conference, mainly focused on developers. And they launched a ton of new things. As the blog post says, 100 things that we announced at I/O 2026. And a lot of these were around AI and their AI functionality. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, certainly not going to go through 100 things, but I saw this post on X and I thought it was quite funny because it's very true. It's in Gemini. Just create it in AI Studio. Oh no, that's your Google One account. For Workspace, you need Gemini Business. No, not Gemini Advanced. It's AI Pro now. And carry on. You can carry on reading this in your own leisure. What this point highlights is something that I've certainly experienced is that Google is such a large organization. They've got so many different surface areas and they've got so many complementary teams that are building AI things that there is a massive crossover in these different products. We use Google Workspace, and as part of that, we get access to I don't even know what type of Gemini business starter it is, but that's different to Gemini Enterprise, and that's different to Ultra, which we would need. I just found it very, very confusing to know what I have access to and what I should be using. And we just defaulted back to Anthropic, which is just easy. Here's one or two things, and this is what they do. This is the challenge that both Google and Microsoft have got as they go on this path. They've got to try and service all of the different customers while making it simple to understand. But a couple of things that were announced that I think is useful for you to know, and this is going to feed into a webinar that we're going to hold in a couple of weeks. This is the biggest update to the Google search bar, probably in the 25 or so years since the Google search bar has existed. And that is AI mode. So you're going to see that on the right-hand side. And when you click on AI mode, I just did an AI mode chat here about what can you tell me about Kowalah for AI adoption. And you're really expanding the AI sort of snapshot, AI overview that you've seen at the top of AI search in Google over the last few months and quarters. So AI mode is, I don't know the percentage, but it's starting to pick up quite a significant percentage of the Google search because people are looking for the answer. They're not looking for another site in many cases. What that feeds into is, okay, as a company, how do we get ourselves serviced in this? So here I was asking about Kowalah, and what is great here is that it's pulled in information from my LinkedIn. It's pulled in accurate and up-to-date information from the Kowalah website. And I'm happy with this because we spend a lot of time making sure that the website services and supports these types of searches. So that's a plus. But I do speak to customers who go, well, we're not being surfaced in this way. How should we approach that? One thing that was launched last week, and I'll give you the link to this page, Google published new search guidance for how Google looks at AI generated content. You may be drawn into thinking that if we just get AI to write a huge ton of content on our website, then Google will soak that up and will turn up in our search, their search engines. But what this article covers is about rewarding high quality content. So individual content that's specific to you, to your company. It's very valuable. It puts the reader at the heart of it. It's not AI slop, and it educates the reader, and it's likely that they would share it or link to it. It talks a little bit about our advice for users that are creating AI types of content. And then some specific things down here, I think I will find. Anyway, I'll share the link out to you. There's some good advice on what you should or should not be doing when you're thinking about the content that you're creating with AI or as humans. Now we've got a webinar on the 10th of June where we're going to talk about this in more detail. So I will share that with you a little bit later. We're coming up to our time, so I'm not going to open up to questions today. But just to say, I'm building on that topic of AEO, which stands for Answer Engine Optimization or Generative Engine Optimization. How do we get discovered in these AI tools or in search? We've got the next in our Spotlight series of webinars. Spotlight is where we have a guest on who's a specialist in their area. And we're really thrilled to welcome Natalia to the webinar, and we're going to be talking about this topic of AEO. What is it that you should be doing as a content provider, a website owner, and how can you ensure that your company gets found and we drive traffic and converting traffic to your website? So to register, just scan the QR code or go to the Kowalah website and go to the resources and Wednesday webinars, and then you can register there. And we look forward to seeing you there in a couple of weeks. And of course, we'll be back on next week to talk about something that is top of mind over the next 7 days. With that, thank you very much. Thanks for joining. If you joined live, I appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks as well, and we'll see you soon.